But it is 10 o'clock, so I'd like to get started. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. And Morena, good morning. I officially declare the finance meeting of the 16th of June to be open, and do that with a level of excitement, given that this is the first meeting we've had in the chamber since March, and I detect the excitement. I detect some excitement levels already before we've actually done the deep dive into the financials. So thank you everyone for being here. And I also welcome Councillor Martin and Councillor Margaret, who are currently on Zoom. Point of order, Mr. Chair. Do you think the words excitement and finance committee are appropriate? Well, I guess I'm setting the standard, and at the end of today's meeting, you can then evaluate whether or not the day has been exciting as you expected it to be. So welcome, and welcome to visitors here in the chamber, our visitors on Zoom, as well as the councillors who I've indicated who are currently on Zoom. So we have apologies for today, and I've received apologies. Yep. Is it, what's the echo? That's, yeah, but I'm getting some echo.
Oh, yeah. Just carry on.
Okay, there's okay. So apologies from the Deputy Mayor Taylor, Councillor Hamilton, and Councillor Thompson, and for lateness, Mayor Southgate, and partial attendance from Councillor Gallagher. Are there any other apologies?
Point of information, I anticipate attending the whole meeting.
Okay, Councillor Martin will be attending the whole meeting. Thank you.
Just present.
So please bear with us today as we navigate the technology that we've got. This is the first time we've had a meeting with attendees appearing via the information technology. We've got Councillor Bunting in both places, unfortunately. He's trying to. We certainly won't let him ask a double lot of questions anyway. So would somebody please move the apologies? Thank you, Councillor Maxine. Seconder, thanks, Councillor Dave. Those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. The confirmation of the agenda, and we've changed the agenda around a little bit to accommodate Tracy today, but I will ask for item 7, which is currently on the run sheet following item 12, to move that back to its rightful place between 6 and 8. And in saying that, I note that there's an updated staff recommendation for item 7, and let's make the order of the agenda fairly flexible with us starting from item 7. So would somebody, I'm happy to move that the agenda. Thank you, Councillor Ewan. Those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Declarations of interest. Are there any? No? Okay.
Seems to be a distinct lack of interest.
Certainly no conflict anyway on that. And public forum, there are no speakers in today's public forum. All right, so let's quickly confirm the finance minutes of the 28th of April, subject to one minor change, and that's at the top of page 7, where it says that we actually met in the council chamber. Of course, that was a Zoom meeting, so we just need to change that factor there. Thank you. Have a seconder, please. Councillor Mark. Any discussion on the minutes? Those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Okay, let's move on to item 7, and that is the capital monitoring report. Sorry, that is the capital portfolio monitoring report. Oh, sorry. Well, let's do the chair's. We'll do the chair's report first. Yep, thank you. Chair's report is on page 13. I'll take the chair's report as read. Are there any questions? I have asked Blair if he could just, because I make reference in there in my report to the shovel-ready projects, and of course the report was written 10 or 12 days ago. I've asked Blair, following the Prime Minister's announcement late yesterday, just to give us a little bit of an update as to where we are with the shovel-ready projects and the significance of yesterday's announcements.
Yes,
Thanks,
thank
Blair.
you, Chair, and good morning, members. So yesterday there was an article announcement from the government around projects, 11 shovel-ready projects, and many initially interpreted this as being the first announcement of funding towards projects that we had all submitted to the government for. In fact, those 11 projects had previously been funded under previous announcements by the government over the last 6 months. They are, in fact, projects that are going to be hard-coded into a variation to the Resource Management Act in terms of a fast-tracked resource consenting process. So those projects will be eligible to go to an expert consenting panel to speed up and bypass the normal consenting processes for those particular projects. So there has been no announcements yet in terms of the shovel-ready project funding. We understand that those announcements will happen within a month. That's the latest information we have. And so we are continuing to liaise with the government, both officials and ministers, around our particular packages. The announcement yesterday in terms of the RMA legislation provides the 3 pathways for projects to be fast-tracked. Those 11 projects yesterday will immediately go into that fast-tracked process. In addition, there's a second pathway where if any particular organisational council considers they have a project that is of significance and meets certain criteria, we can put forward a case to the government for that project to be considered in a fast-tracking consenting process. And then thirdly, there are projects undertaken by NZTA and KiwiRail, in particular around rail corridors, where those projects can also be fast-tracked for consenting. So yesterday's announcements around consenting, not to be mistaken by funding announcements, still to come.
Thanks, Blair. Councillor Mark.
Thank you. Just a quick question. So are we anticipating much sort of jiggery-pokery with the annual plan that we've just worked through, with the quantums and the numbers? I mean, with the timing, it's all going to seemingly come out at once, isn't it? It's going to be a bit of a collision.
Councillor Mark, my view would be that we would finalise the annual plan probably before we get enough information to add to the annual plan with regard to shovel-ready. So we would bring those conversations through the Finance Committee and just make decisions as we know, as we have more information and know the impact on our finances.
Right. So will it come to a point to where it comes to committee, you know, they say, yes, we will support you in that. Does it still have to come back to us beforehand, or is it automatically?
No, it needs to come back and be a council decision.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mark. Councillor Dave.
Thanks. A question to Blair. You mentioned those 11 projects had already been previously approved, and this was sort of like a refresh announcement. Was that the tranche of projects where the Waikato got almost nothing? Was that a different tranche?
No, the vast majority were in that particular tranche, yes, Councillor.
Well, what, sorry?
So some of those projects were in that earlier tranche of money that the Waikato only got $60 million from, so you are correct. So, for example, the motorway extension from Papakura to Drury was part of that announcement of $8 billion, where the Waikato received $60 million for the Pairua interchange, was the only funding that we got.
So we could say it was all old news?
It's old funding news, but new in terms of RMA processes, yes.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. And I see there are no questions on our Zoom participants, so I will move the Chair's report. Do I have a seconder, please? Thanks, Councillor Maxine. Is there any debate? There being none, those in favour of receiving the Chair's report, how are we going to do this? Hands or hands?
I think vote by the buttons, and then those ones that are voting by the hands, my Zoom will call out.
Okay, so voting on the voting panel.
The motion is carried unanimously, noting that councillor Gallagher and councillor Forsyth have voted via audiovisual link.
Thank you. All right, let's move on now to item number 7, which is the capital monitoring report, and welcome Ian Anderson, who we haven't seen for a while, but welcome back, Ian, and also Chris.
Thanks, Councillor Rob. I'm Ian, I'm the Capital Financial Lead in the Development Group, and I've brought my friend with me, Chris Allen. We're going to present the Capital Monitoring Report.
Ian, do you mind turning the mic towards you?
Is that better?
That's better.
Thank you. We're both going to present the Capital Monitoring Report today. Why is that? Because if you look at the report, really what you see, this is a report that covers the financial performance of the capital program, but it also has a heavy emphasis on the physical delivery of the program. So I'll cover the financial aspects. Chris, and if you note at the back of the room, we have our 8 program managers with us that can cover any aspects of your questions around the actual physical delivery of the program. And so that's why we're going to do it. I will draw your attention to, since the last version of this report you saw, we have looked at our 8 program summary sheets that you find in attachment 2, and we've changed the emphasis a little bit to try and focus a little bit more on the key projects that are being delivered under those capital programs rather than the narrative. So that's it, and Chris will expand on that a little bit more when he speaks to you later on. The report and the body itself, in the body of the report itself, we also will talk about highlights since the last meeting, and that last meeting was the end of April, and we also make you aware of 4 emerging issues. Again, Chris can talk to those a little bit later as we move through the report presentation. What I will do, though, is talk to you about the budget and the financials at this point. And I know a question, I think Councillor Rob had raised a question about just an explanation about how to read the financial tables that we present in the report. So what I wanted to do was draw your attention firstly to section 12, which I believe is page 16 of your report, where we talk about capital expenditure forecast. You'll see there we list 6 items or 6 areas where the budget may become amended, from rephasing deferrals, delay deferrals, renewal and compliance deferrals, capital savings, projects that we bring forward, and other changes. So if we now move to section 15 of the report, again on page 17, you'll see we start with a 1920 annual planned capital expenditure budget of $329.6 million, and that's embodied in the annual plan that was approved at the beginning of this year. And then you'll see that at the last meeting we approved changes which reduced that capital expenditure program down to $193.3 million. So to reiterate, those are the 6 changes categorised there, and those are changes that have been approved up until this meeting. So we go into the meeting today starting with a capital expenditure starting position of 193.3. If we turn the page to page 18, you'll now see we are making you aware of changes we're bringing to this meeting today. And again, we start opening position at 193.3 million. We move through the various changes for a closing position of 191.3. What the number's telling you is that staff are forecasting that come 30th of June 2020, that is the level of the capital expenditure we expect to see in the actual result. Then what we do is that's on the expenditure side of the table. If we move through sections 17, 18, 19, you'll see we then just repeat that same exercise moving through the revenue. And if I just talk to those numbers very quickly, we came into this meeting with a revenue target, revised revenue target of 55.2 million. I'm in table 19, and we're expecting that to be 55.3 at the end of the financial year. Deferrals obviously are the most significant item that change the budget position from where we start, and you'll see in section 20 of the report that's an overall summary or an overall total of the deferrals for the current financial year, and you'll see at the moment we are including the deferrals already approved and those that we're recommending for approval today. We've got total deferrals now of 143 million, so that's 143 million of capital expenditure we're removing from this financial year and moving it forward into future financial years. That covers the budget. Yes. Sir.
Yes, well, I'll let Ian finish, or did you want to?
I'm happy to take a question at that point if you would like.
Okay, all right, yep.
Thanks, Mr Chair. Thank you for that. Can you update us then how that affects the overall finances in light of the fact? Are there any interest savings? Are there any OPEX savings as a result of the additional deferrals?
Oh, yes, most definitely, and I'm probably moving a little bit into Tracy's territory here, but clearly the process works this way, is that we identify the deferrals, and they're quite significant. They go through the financial modelling. That takes into account, therefore, that we're not spending the money this year, therefore you're going to have your consequential savings along borrowing costs, depreciation, and any operating and maintenance that may have been associated with those capital programs. So those savings come through, and when Tracy presents her report and the financial strategy report, you will see the benefit of that coming through.
Right. Mr Chairman, we all recall our wonderful meetings of late last week. And so this could, in theory, be quite significant, could it not, in terms of these quantums?
I need to be really clear that the data that you were working with last week during the annual plan presentations has used this current data that we're looking at, Councillor Wilson.
Okay.
Okay.
Numbers are included.
Yeah, the numbers
Right.
are included. So it's not something new, it's not additional, it's just a flow of the data coming through. So we're now coming back in a Finance Committee environment and giving you a position as at that the annual plan had already taken this into account.
All right, thank you.
Perhaps come back to questions, if you've got some further questions.
I just
Just while we're working on those tables, Ian, and thanks for the explanation of them. When you talk about capital revenue result in para 17, that's effectively subsidies, isn't it? Is that these are the capitals? This is revenue we get from subsidies that we receive from the likes of NZTA and so forth.
So that's correct. So we call it capital revenue. It's effectively got two components. The larger is NZTA subsidies that come in. The other category is any revenue we receive from any other third-party external revenue that's associated directly with the creation or the build of the asset. Probably one of the better examples would be connections in the water, wastewater, stormwater area. We receive direct contributions from people to pay for those, so that revenue will be reflected there as well.
And of course, we don't get that unless we actually do build the asset, do we? So that's why there's a deferral in the revenue?
Correct, so they go hand in hand, yes. So under a matching principle, Yeah,
okay, thank you.
The last thing I wanted to say in a financial aspect, and I'll start with a little bit of an apology. I prepared this report on the basis of the 31st of March 2020, and the report Tracy's about to present to you is at the 30th of April. This report, if I just quickly go to section 13 of my report, talks about the actual spend at the end of 31st of March was 141.9 million. I do want to emphasise that if you compare that to a comparative period of 12 months ago, where we'd spent 94.5. I think that's a great indication of the fact that the organisation is ramping up its capital program and it's starting to meet the demands of that far greater capital program. However, that's your 31st of March position, 141. I can give you an update that as at 30th of April, and remember April was a lockdown period for COVID, we did spend 8.4 million, that took our balance to 150.3. And subsequently, since then in May, we've spent a further 13 million. So at the end of May, which is your 11-month result, if you wanted to note that, the total capital spend for the organisation is sitting at 163.3 million, which puts us on target for our end-of-year forecast position. So at that point, from a financial aspect, I'm happy to take any other questions, or I'm happy equally if Chris can then pick up the other aspects of the report in terms of the physical delivery of the program.
Just one, sorry, Councillor Ewan.
Mr Chairman, I run the risk of sounding even more stupid than I did in my last question, but
You never sound stupid.
You're on a roll.
I'm on a roll, and I don't want to stop now. We made a lot of the fact that we were deferring $63 million worth of projects as part of our annual plan discussions late last week. And so I think what I'm now realising is what you're telling me in regards to point 20, that even before that we had agreed to delay 56 million and 22 million in renewals and compliance deferrals to make a total of 143 million. Is that what you're saying?
That's what that report's, yes,
Okay.
for this year.
Okay. Am I the only elected member who didn't quite realise that? Because there was so much focus on the 63 million that I had lost optics on the 56 million and the 22. Okay.
I think we're talking in different years here, though, aren't we? This is...
No, are we?
Well, I'm trying to...
So this report is about the capital program this year, 1920. The annual plan report we had was about the next year coming in 2021 and deferring funding out of 2021 into 2021 and beyond.
Right. So the ones that were in this current financial year are going to occur in the next financial year starting July. Is that what you're saying?
Some of them...
Not necessarily. You can't make the assumption that the deferrals come out of this year and they all drop into next year. They come out and are smoothed across maybe 1, 2, 3 years.
Right. And our planning accurately reflects that.
And our planning accurately reflects that. So then we move into the annual plan environment. We were looking at the beginning of the LTP Year 3 program, plus what we expect to be with these deferrals, and then we've said, right, and now we're saying 63 of those we now need to move out again to get to deliver you a realistic deliverable program.
So Councillor, if you look at attachment 3 on page 42, there's attachment 3, page 42. So there's a full list of the deferrals there, and you can see the years that we've moved them out to.
Okay. So if I could, Mr. Chair, one further question. So the amazing additional findings of savings with interest that we got in the last throes of the annual plan discussions last week, were they purely reflective of the savings that were found for the next financial year, or were they the compound savings of those and these?
Compound, both.
Yeah.
That's
Right.
why the number was large.
There'll be some rollover, yeah.
Right, because, okay,
And I do remember Tracy making that point, but maybe we could have made it clearer.
with me you've got to speak really
Yeah,
slowly
I didn't
and
want to
use
say
small
that.
words.
Yeah.
Think like I'm an Australian and use that. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Ewan. Councillor Mark.
Right, I see your question, Ewan, and I raise you with this one. Just regards the, can you just clarify for me the difference on page 11, and I'm just trying to find a wee bit more detail, but it doesn't give me a lot more, on the difference between the Te Awa remediation and the Te Awa path. They're two quite separate projects, right?
Yep. Can I come to that? Shall I?
Yeah.
Before you do that, Chris, I've got a couple
just
of
wait for-
questions
Yeah,
that
I'll
relate
wait.
Can we hold that one to my
relate to this earlier section before Chris. And that first question follows on from Councillor Ewan around renewals and compliance in paragraph 12. Are we reasonably comfortable that we're performing all the necessary and planned renewals to ensure that our assets remain operational and functional, given that we've got some deferrals starting to creep in? And that's why we developed in this long-term plan the need for renewals and maintaining our assets.
So the answer to that, Mr. Chairman, is yes. And I think one of the great things that Council have given us is delegation to manage the renewals as a program.
Sorry, Chris, can we just have a little bit of quietness while Chris is speaking, please? Thank you.
Yep. So we're managing the program. You've given us. Sorry, I'm just trying to find the page number here.
there are some...
I'm just looking for the page number.
I'm pretty sure the answer is yes.
The answer is yes.
Okay.
But if you look at the attachment on page 33, so what we're giving you is visibility of how we're spending that money. So because we're managing as a program, we're much better able to look after the assets that deteriorate quicker than what we thought. So you can see from that graph there that there are a number of venues, transport and community assets that we've managed within the program and done renewals on them. And we're doing that by finding savings within that program and looking at other things within the program which may not be so urgent to do. So what we are doing as an organisation is looking at prioritisation of our assets and which ones need renewing, because it's not always predictable when assets start failing. So the answer is yes, we're managing them a heck of a lot better than we've ever managed them before.
Okay, and one last question, Ian, on your part. Paragraph 26, and I know that this involves both finance and your department, but there's 27.7 million work in progress in paragraph 26 that's ready to be capitalised and depreciated. Can you confirm that that will happen before the end of this month, that all of that 27 million will have been capitalised and depreciated?
Sorry, I apologise for smiling. I talked to Tracy prior to this meeting and said if the question came up, unfortunately, I would have to ask her to respond to that.
Well, I know that it involves Tracy, but it also involves you guys in sending the information through so that finance can do it. Hence the reason why I'll probably ask Tracy again.
I can certainly confirm that there is a significant amount of work going on currently within the organisation, looking at the capitalisation program and ensuring that that data is being done and flowing through to the finance team for the capitalisation. But I can confirm that, but Tracy might want to give us an update.
Okay.
When she comes.
When you come forward. Yep, no, that's fine. I'm just keen that we don't slip. We did have some problems a few years back, and I'm keen to make sure that we keep on top of it now while it's only 27 million. Okay, thank you. Those are my questions. Councillor Mark, did you have another question?
My question,
Yep,
can you just quickly
come to that. Yep.
explain the... Yeah, that was it.
I'll definitely cover that.
I don't know why my button's still pushed.
Okay,
Sorry,
all right.
Rob.
So now we move on to the second part of the report, Chris, which is you.
Councillors, I just really wanted to reinforce a significant change in the reporting that we've taken, and to illustrate it, if I could talk to page 31, which is the Peacocks program, would be really good, or page 30. So if you look at page 30, that's the reporting that we've been bringing to this committee, which has been at a program level. So we have three levels that I want to talk to: program, project and contract. And so what we've been reporting is at a program level. So I don't think that has been giving enough visibility to councillors about the granularity of our program. So we're in the process of making a change. And if you go to page 31, you can see the change that we've made. So we've done that for most of the programs now. The next report will have all of the programs there. So what this is designed to do is give you more visibility about the individual projects that make up, and this I've chosen Peacocks because there's a specific question I've been asked about Peacocks. So what this table is trying to do is to give you more granularity on the projects we're doing in Peacocks. If you look to the right, there's an indicator of the program with the yellow being construction, so when we expect to be in building the projects, when we're investigating and when we're designing, so you can get a better idea of timing and when we're expecting to do projects. We've put the key project budget in there, how much we've actually spent and what our forecast spend is on that particular project. And we've added a little traffic signal health report there to say, in our opinion, in managing this project, if it's green, everything's looking good, we're on track. If we put an amber colour in there, it says that we've got some risks that we're dealing with, but don't worry, we're dealing with them and monitoring and managing them, and you can ask questions about them. If we put a red in there, what we're saying is there's some really significant issues that we need to escalate up to council. So I think that's been missing a little bit in that granularity, and so hopefully you can see this as a big improvement. We'll roll that out and we'll keep that going with all future reports. The two programs, I haven't yet done it for the citywide waters and the citywide transport, but that will be at the next meeting. We would have caught up and have the same level of visibility there. So the question I had and the reason I've come to this page is I had a question before the committee meeting about the top project in there, which is our current State Highway 3 intersection project, and why the dollars were higher than what councillors thought they were. So I think the answer to that is the difference between projects and contracts. So within that $19.5 million, we have a physical works contract which has come to this council to build the to build the roundabout, and that was approved for $12 million. So the contract is $12 million, but in this project, is to build the intersection plus quite a large piece of the road that goes into Peacocks. We'll probably, I think the team is going to come back to you and ask you in the next meeting that we would like to do some of that road, which is funded but not in the contract, and ask for an increase in the contract because they think there's lots of efficiencies to do it under this contract. So we'll come back and ask for an increase in the approved contract sum, but using, for stuff that's already funded. So my overall message there is that that project is in good health. It's going really well. The contract's on target. We have some COVID cost issues like all of our contracts that we'll need a conversation with you on, but the project is good. The 19.3 includes a whole lot of other things and not just the contract. 19.5, sorry, 19.5, yeah. So that's the difference between a contract and a project, I guess. A project might have a number of contracts under it. It might have land acquisition. It might have a number of different components of cost within the project budget. So what we thought would be of most interest to governance is the project budget and how we're tracking against the overall project budget. So councillors, I'll leave that there. I've got two other issues, and TR was one of those. I'll come back to Councillor Mark. So is there any questions on the style of reporting? And hopefully councillors see that as a big improvement, and next month you'll see that in the City Waters one as well. And then what we're doing is lifting out the orange and the red and put them into the emerging risk component of the report. So we'll try and have a discussion about why it's orange or why it's red with elected members as well.
Councillor Angela, your question?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I love it. I think it's really good and it's very transparent in terms of exactly where you're at with projects. I'm just on page 29 under the community ones. I noticed that the Zoo Waiwhakareike shared entry precinct is in amber or yellow or orange. It doesn't really tell me why. And also, second part of that question is, I see that it's in the design phase. I think I've asked this before, but when will elected members get a look at that for feedback or input? Or that might be a question to the Chair of Community.
Yep,
might be on their work programme.
I would guess Rebecca might be here, might get Rebecca or Lance to answer that, but I think it's orange because there are funding issues that we're still dealing with through the annual plan and the timing of that. So if you make the decisions in the annual plan that we anticipate, that project will be proceeding. So I think that's the reason it's orange at the moment. If I can just hand over to Lance or Rebecca.
Yeah, so sorry I missed that. I had to duck you up for something urgent. I'm not sure if you're there, Councillor Angela. When we had the briefing back in February, we showed some concept designs and some of the pictures. So, and we did say at the time there's still detailed design to be done. There's sort of draft footprints, but a bit more detail to be worked through. So essentially, Chris is right. We're waiting pretty much for that tick off, and then we'll be going into that process, and elected members will get some visibility of that when we get to that point, which should be around August, September.
Cool, great, thanks.
I know you're keenly interested.
And so aligned with that, we have an upgrade on the road outside as well, Brymer Road. So we're aligning the two projects so they go in parallel. So we can get efficiencies by doing the two together. So look, the other two issues I want to bring to councillors' attention, and the first is Baverstock Road urban upgrade. So we had some discussions leading up to the annual plan on this project. So just to remind councillors, this is a project that's within the Chief Executive's delegation to approve a contract. We've got a contract ready to go. It's within budget. And the Chief Executive will be exercising his delegation to move that project forward. So we just wanted to be transparent around that, and you can see that covered in paragraph 11.3, just indicating that we're ready to award and we're proceeding with that contract. The next issue is Te Awa, and the last issue for me is Te Awa. So if I can probably just take you to paragraphs 31 to 34, page 20. So to answer Councillor Mark's question, there's two Te Awa projects. So one project is the fix of the slip in town here. That's the Te Awa remediation project. So that's all on track and that's happening. That was part of the funding decision yesterday or the day before as well, to add some extra funding to the project to fix the slip, to really do a good enhancement job around the slip site. So that's a project that's on track. Eva Lisa and Maria Barry are managing that. It's well on track and that's good. So this is the Te Awa pathway. So just to remind councillors, this is a project that's been developed over a number of years now. It's as part of the Te Awa National Cycleway path from this section from Ngarawahia through to Cambridge, the Avanti Drome. So the remaining section is from our Cobham Waieri interchange down through the eastern side of the river, through Hammond Park, up through Tamaheri, where then joins a section which Waikato are building. Then it joins a section which NZTA are building, then it joins a section which Waipa is building, so we get that interregional cycleway route all the way through to Avanti Drome. So our share of our project, we had a budget of 4.2. We're at a point now where we've completed our design and analysis of that project. The project budget, unfortunately, will be higher than 4.2. It's $5.8 million. So that's in the paragraphs in front of you. We've also highlighted this in the capital discussions leading up to the annual plan. So what we are asking council today, talking about in this meeting, but for a resolution in the financial strategy report, is approval for the extra cost on that contract so we can proceed. So NZTA have indicated to us just very recently that their budgets are under pressure because of all of the COVID costs, but there is funding available now for them to put in their normal share of that fully integrated package all the way through from Cobham interchange through to the Avanti Drome. But they're looking for a decision quickly while the funding is there from their side to approve it. So look, our recommendation to council is a resolution to proceed with that. Unfortunately, even though paragraph 34 said there would be a resolution in the financial strategy report, we missed putting it in the financial strategy report, so I think governance have got a resolution that I've crafted up with the intent to go into the financial strategy report. So just to remind councillors about the three reports we have to this meeting, We have a capital report where we're not making resolutions. We have an operations report where we don't make resolutions. So any resolutions that have financial impact are made in the third report, which is the strategy report, Tracy's strategy report coming up. So I just wonder with you can put up the resolution for discussion, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
And the reason why we do that is so that you can see the full impact of any decision in the capital and the full financial strategy modelling and the financial strategy monitoring report.
Councillor Mark, can I come back to you, even though your Councillor Dave was ahead, just simply because you'd previously raised a question on this? Just
to clarify
continuity.
the difference, that's cool. My question is, so you're looking here at a difference of 1.6 million from what we budgeted. Is that, so what you're asking for is our half of that, should NZCA?
Correct. If you look at the resolution, that clarifies it. So we always talk in gross dollars here.
Yeah,
So the gross project cost will be 5.8 million. NZTA will fund 51% and our share would be 49%.
Yep.
So our share of the increased cost is, I've put it in the resolution up there, is 784,000. So what I've anticipated here is, if I can just read that out, so the resolution would be to approve an increase in the path budget by 1.6 million, subject to the Transport Agency approving its subsidy. I've also put another note there with the local share for the full project being promoted by Council as a contribution towards any transport-related economic stimulus packages currently being considered by the government. So if we had heard by now about stimulus, we might have had a different approach, but we haven't heard about the stimulus package. So I just wanted to position this, if we do get a stimulus package, that this project is part of the 20-minute city package that we put forward. So we would really like to say, if they're looking for a partnership funding approach, that this is part of our partnership funding this project. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, Mark, you're happy?
Fine, thanks,
yeah, Councillor Dave.
Thanks, Chris. On that front, I've got a concern that if we were to approve the extra expenditure now, our share of it, then the government might say, phew, we're off the hook, we don't have to put any extra money into the Te Awa walkway, the connection there. So do you think that this motion with the sort of subject to is going to be enough sort of cover for us so they can't just assume we're going to pay for it?
Look, my opinion will probably be as good as your one on that one. The only other point I would note is that this project will still have to come back to Council in 2 months' time for contract approval. So this is not approving the contract, this is just approving that our local share is available. So
well, sorry, perhaps I should have put it a different way. Do you think this gives us a better chance than if we just said, yep, we'll approve it, full stop?
Oh, absolutely. I think having a resolution like that, we would leverage off that resolution, almost to say, well, it's a conditional approval because this is the expectation of Council. Yeah, absolutely, it would be much better.
Thanks. And just thinking about that walkway, my understanding of the Advantage-Drome to the city leg of the Te Awa walkway, was that not a part of the approval for the expressway, Hamilton to Cambridge expressway, that they had to have an off-road cycleway as part of the deal somewhere, servicing the same origin destination?
I'm not sure about it being a condition, but it's certainly been worked on that as part of the Cambridge bypass and the funding in the Cambridge bypass, they would contribute the cost of the section all the way through from the Waikato boundary to Hooker Road somewhere. So that was part of...
Why not within our boundary? Because I know part of the work they're doing is, we've been told, is the off-ramp from, what's its name road, the first road in Tamaheri, Newell Road, or no, before Newell Road, what's the one on the other side down?
Riverlea?
Sorry?
Riverlea?
No, on the out of the city. Yeah, anyway, the off-ramp coming into the city there is part of the expressway development, and it comes into the city right up to the Hillcrest roundabout. I would have thought we would have got more contribution from NZTA because it's part of the, the walking and cycling connection that nowadays has to go alongside expressways.
Yeah, this project's just always been developed separately. I guess our engagement with NZTA has been about that operational corridor separately. That's not concluded yet about, a good operational corridor coming into the city. So this Tiara has always, been promoted separately. It's just they've chosen to fund it out of the Cambridge bypass funding they had.
Inter-regional roads, we don't have to pay for the highways, so we don't pay for State Highway 1, at all, and this is sort of part of State Highway 1. How come for cycling and walking we do have to fund a share? Because that's the only cycling and walking route between Hamilton and Cambridge.
Yep, I guess it's a standard process for walking like that and vesting with the normal subsidy. I think on the large section, on the state highway section, they are funding that 100%.
But it is a state highway section for walking and cycling. It's how if you want to cycle from downtown Hamilton to Cambridge, you would have to take this route because it's it's the only off-road route for cycling.
Yep.
So I'm trying to see why there's a difference. I'm not saying you have invented it. NZTA seems to have arbitrarily said, local councils can pay a share of the walking and cycling inter-regional costs, but we don't have to pay a cent of the car use inter-regional costs.
Could we perhaps take that offline? It may well be.
I'm just trying to
I can see
raise the point that
I can see where you're going, Dave.
equitable treatment.
Yeah. Matter of being consistent, isn't it?
Because that does seem to be par for the course. Everyone but NZTA is sort of funding stuff like same in the north of the city.
Yeah, but to be fair on NZTA, they've been promoting this one quite strongly, and they are investing heavily in this.
They're investing proportionally a lot more heavily in the road, are they not, for cars?
Yep. So
I know you'd like to defend your old employers, Chris, but sorry, I will take that further off.
That's worthy of a discussion, isn't it? Offline with.
Could I just ask, and it's a sort of a related question, what is the story with the expressway road connection between the expressway and Hillcrest? Because it's the parallel route to this. So is that something? Because I know that there was talk about us having to do some of the work at the roundabouts on State Highway 1 in that upgrade.
I'd have to come back to you on that, Council. I'm just not up to speed where we're at with that one.
Could we put that
it's
in
an unresolved issue?
Maybe the Infrastructure Committee report? I think might be at a good place for that. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Dave. Councillor Maxine.
Thanks, Chair. Chris, you talk about the other partners that are involved in the program and that our cost has increased. Are we aware of any other costs for our partners in their construction and their willingness to complete the project, if there is?
Yes, so Mark and Sammy just advised me today that Waikato District Council, their costs have increased and they signed that off yesterday, Mark, at a meeting. And Waipara have signed it off. So Waikato signed it off yesterday and Waipara are good to go.
And so all parties are committed to completing the project?
Yeah, we're the final one to commit.
Yeah, and look forward to a positive response from government on the 20-minute city, presumably. And the stimulus package?
That would be great, and that was the second part of that resolution there, that if we got a positive spot on it, that we'd count the full project cost as a contribution towards that whole package.
And the expectation is that it would be greater than the 51% currently offered?
That's certainly our hope. Yeah.
Kia ora. Thank you.
Perhaps we could change the motion when we get to it to a minimum of 51%. Okay, Councillor Kesh.
Can you talk me through any risks, if there are any, in delaying this decision until we hear the results from the stimulus package announcement?
The risks, the way I see the risks are that there is no stimulus package that would pay for that. That's one risk. We certainly hope that there would be. The other risk is the one I articulated at the beginning, that NZTA have funding available to approve this bigger project now. They can't guarantee they'll have it in the next financial year because of the pressure on their budgets, because of all of the COVID costs up and down the country. So what we've been told is a window now to secure the funding. They can't guarantee that window will be there in the next financial year.
Got you. Thank you.
Councillor Ewan.
Question, Takesh, is a very good question. But we're talking maybe only needing to delay 30 days. Does that close the window?
That's the advice that I've had, because it's about them making a decision this financial year, so their financial year is the same as ours. That's what I'm told, Councillor.
Any further questions? Councillor Maxine, yeah.
Just one further question from the partner's perspective, in that if Hamilton City Council were to delay, what signal might that be sending the partnership for the whole of the project? If you tell me that Waipa and Waikato have already approved their extension of the budget.
Look, I'd only be guessing in my answer to that. I'd guess I'd be disappointed but accepting of it. You know, because if you decide not to do it today, the project's not lost. You've still got the stimulus opportunity, and we've still got the advocacy to fund it in due course as well. Yeah. So I think probably disappointed, but that, yeah, I'm guessing that would be as far.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you. And I've just got one final question on Resolution Drive under emerging issues.
Sure.
You're not going to cover those off separately? I can ask that question now?
Yep.
Yep. And that is, could the delay in funding mean that this access might not open when the expressway is completed?
Yep, that's certainly the issue we're dealing with. So what council has signed up to is a lump sum contribution to NZTA to build Resolution Drive as part of the expressway and open as part of the expressway. They approached us a little while ago to say that they think there's been some scope changes there and that our cost contribution wasn't enough. We don't agree with that, and we've been holding the line on that. Those conversations are just are ongoing, so I just thought it was timely to, you know, in the interest of this new reporting, to bring this up to council. I think we've had this discussion before, but it's good just to put it on the map and the radar and just keep an eye on it.
Yep.
So I think we're looking to bring that to a head with them in the next couple of weeks, actually.
And Waikato are presumably also involved in this discussion. From memory, I believe that some of the access will be within their territory.
Yeah. So if you can sort of picture it, there's a big new interchange on the expressway at Resolution Drive.
Yep.
So there's a link that we're paying for, but they're going to build, that comes down and connects with our roundabout with the eels and the walkers. On the other side of the interchange, there's a small 300 to 400 metre length that will link up with Horsham Downs Road, so that's Horsham Downs link. So that's a Waikato District Council responsibility, and they're in discussions with NZTA about completing that link as well. It's certainly very, very desirable for that link to be built as part of the whole expressway to just get the right traffic on the right road. So we've been advocating hard for that link for many years. So I think they're very close on agreeing that as well.
So they've got issues too, NZTA have got issues with them over the cost?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay, so we could go in together and argue our position?
We have been doing that at a staff level.
Okay.
I think it needs to come to a head within the next month and have some direction on that, so that could well involve some elected member involvement.
Are they seeking a significant increase on our 10.3 million that was previously agreed?
Yes, the first figure was very significant. We've got it down to something a lot less than that, but not at zero yet.
Okay, and that's also subject to a subsidy too, isn't it?
Yes, yeah, so the our 10 million contribution has a 51% subsidy.
Okay, thank you. Further questions? Councillor Angela.
Thank you, Mr Chair. One request and one question, just on page 32 under Renewals and Compliance. When we did the budget for through the current 10-year plan, you separated out renewals and compliance, and I'm just interested if you could do it for these reports as well going forward, Chris.
So you'd like to see the renewal component separate from the compliance?
Compliance, yeah. And the reason for that is my question. Are we hearing anything coming from a central government in terms of what increased, if any, compliance costs we're going to be facing as a result of COVID? You know, I guess in the health and safety and building, all of that kind of thing? Or is it a bit too early for that?
Probably a bit too early, but just to just make sure you understand, I'm sure you do, like compliance costs will come in operational costs and CapEx costs. So this is a CapEx compliance. So this is about if we've got health and safety issues that need a bit of investment in assets.
Yeah.
So it's probably not the compliance in terms of Murray's.
So it's not really the quantum
costs with upping
and
training or whatever. So this is a capital compliance budget where we need to do miscellaneous little projects to meet our consents, our stormwater consents or our wastewater consents or health and safety. So it's really capital focused, this one.
Yeah, I know.
Would you still like to see that separation?
Are you saying then it's not significant enough, do you think, to...
I think the dollars are quite significant in here. If you want to see that separation, we can do that.
If I don't want to create more work for you, but just an idea would be, you know, over the next sort of 18 months, I'd be interested to see what comes out of central government in terms, and I think what you're saying is majority of it probably is going to be through OPEX. But I would like to see a bit of a trend over time of...
Can I take that as a request for a report back on the full spectrum of OPEX and capital? So that would probably be more valued, I think, to what you're looking at.
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Chris.
And Councillor Kesh.
Yes, I just had a question regarding the resolution drive discussion. Point 36, like Chris explained, so the agency believe that the scope has increased and the costs have increased, and we don't believe that's the case. Is there, should we be getting a third opinion, an outside opinion, or do you see us coming to some sort of agreement fairly soon or resulting in delays?
So we have we're doing this under an agreement which has got some dispute mechanisms. So those dispute mechanisms are to get the two chief executives around the table to agree. So I think we're at that point now within 2 months to get Richard and the chief executive together. So that's the dispute mechanism. Look, look, they're very constructive discussions too, so there's no, you know, it's, we're just working on technical matters and sort of value engineering as well, just to make sure that, you know, what we're building is what we want, we're not gold plating, etc., that what we're asking for is reasonable. So those are the discussions at the moment, and I'm hoping that will resolve the issues. An unknown to me is COVID and whether they have any expectations of passing on some COVID costs to us as well, so that's another risk as well.
Right, thank you, Councillor Keys. Councillor Mark.
Thank you. The Te Awa River Ride map at the moment, they've got, it goes from the gardens and then it follows a roadway pretty much all the way around. I'm thinking that's because that's where you can go at the moment. So can you just please clarify for me that the piece of track we're talking about is from Hammond Park through Riverlea and across, is that right?
It's all the way from the Common Bridge interchange, all the way through. Council has actually got a briefing tomorrow on it, so we're putting up, Tal is Tal here? Tal's going to lead a briefing on to refresh councillors what's in the Common Wairee Drive interchange, what you decided at Peacocks, what you're deciding at Peacocks, what's in the gardens, how it links to the garden management plan, and then we've added this one on as well, so we can go through in detail on the sections and how that works tomorrow.
So does this funding package essentially goes from Cobham Drive right through there? So does that include the cool overbridge bit on the proposed Peacocks Bridge? Is that part of this project?
No. So that's why we're doing that integrated briefing tomorrow. So that at the moment that's part of the Peacocks program, if there's enough funding there. Potentially part of the stimulus package if we have a funding problem as well. So you're having conversations as part of the Peacock program about that, but we've also put it into the stimulus package if we needed that funding boost for it.
Timing must be a nightmare for you, all this stuff. Because you've got the Peacocks one, they've got this, then you've got all the other councillors as well. So
it's not for me, it's for us.
Okay, councillors, we've completed question time based on what's not on the list. So let's go now to the recommendation, which is that the Finance Committee receives the report. I will move. Do I have a seconder?
What about the additional?
That comes through in the
later report.
In the wrap-up, which is the annual, which is the financial strategy report. Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Maxine. Is there any debate? There being none, I please ask you to go to voting, and we're voting on the board. Yeah, could those on Zoom please raise your hands if you're in favour? Those against? Carried unanimously.
Hang on,
I call for debate. There was no debate. Do you want to debate? Does somebody on Zoom wish to debate? No? Okay, so what is the outcome of the vote?
we just need to see if Paul is partaking in the vote.
Oh, Paula wasn't, okay.
Just confirming, just left,
So, carried
unanimous, noting that Councillor Gallagher and Councillor Forsyth voted via audio-visual link.
Thank you. Right, just a reminder that...
Mr Chair.
The clock is running.
Chair.
Yep, sorry, Councillor Gallagher.
Can I suggest that whenever there is a vote, even if it is just to receive the motion, to receive the report, that at the point at which the voting happens is the actual resolution goes up on the board, or is transmitted through Zoom?
Gallagher. I wonder if we should be doing that when we have something more than just receiving the report. Are you happy with that? Okay, we now move to the annual monitoring report. Welcome to Tracy.
Good morning, everyone. So this annual monitoring report is the results for the 30th of April 2020. So at the time, Council's accounting result was a surplus of $69.2 million, which was $1.4 million unfavourable against a year-to-date surplus of the $70.6 million. So this annual forecast has been updated since the last Finance Committee and now shows an annual result of $78 million. This is our forecast deficit at the moment of $32 million against an original budget of the $110 million. So the key driver for this reduced forecast surplus is the deferral of capital revenue subsidies associated with the deferred capital projects, which you've just heard Ian present to you this morning. We also have the fair value of the HIF fund. So this fair value of the HIF fund is an accounting transaction that we do arising from the borrowing that we do related to the Peacock and HIF funds. So that's the biggest contributor of around $11 million in that space at the moment. The forecast also includes a loss on revaluation of our swaps and a loss on sale of transport assets. Now these transport assets we're still in the process of working through with the team. That is a really conservative loss on sale at the moment, and we're hoping that we'll be able to get that back in the next couple of weeks. But just to be aware, we just decided to put that in the forecast just in case. So on page 51, obviously attachment 1 is the statement of comprehensive revenue and expenses, which shows you how that $32 million is made up. Our balancing the books result year to date is $5.2 million against a forecast of 4.8, and we're now showing a deficit of $3.6 million unfavourable to our original budget of 10.8. So there's just a couple of things that I wanted to go through with you today. So one of them is just around depreciation. So just to carry on from the conversation you just had in the previous presentation on WIP and what that means. So just to be clear, we do take all of what was in those capital deferrals into consideration for the WIP, for the depreciation, and including the WIP as well. So that's also the reason why with the annual plan, why it took so long to calculate it, because obviously it's there's two parts. So what happens this year affects what happens next year going forward. So that WIP, obviously, as Ian alluded to, we are still working on that, and we'll try and get most of that into the system as fast as we can. With regards to the actual depreciation amount, though, that's already been taken into consideration when we do our forecasting as well. So the other one is vested assets. So again, that's also been taken into consideration. So when we do the depreciation budget for the annual plan, that was also part of it. So we take what we've obviously got this year, what we think we're going to do next year, and that's how we forecast the depreciation going forward, which is why as the annual plan, those are the two numbers that do change quite significantly because of obviously what's happening in this current year as well compared to the original long-term plan. A couple of other key areas. So there was a question related to the balance sheet that we've got on page 71. Just around receivables, it looks quite high at the moment, but just remember we've just sent out Q4 rates invoicing. So that's at the moment what that relates to. That figure towards the end of the year will obviously depend on what our rates payments are, and as you know, and we'll have later on today a presentation on some of our debt and some of the decisions that we made as part of COVID and though not chasing debt, if you like. The other one that sits in there, and again is a little bit hard for us to tell and forecast, is our NZTA accrual. So obviously the more work we do, the bigger the debt is, but clearly that's a debt that we obviously do get paid back from NZTA. So the only other thing I kind of wanted to talk about is personnel charges. So I guess at the last meeting I did say that we would try and get that back as much to forecast as we possibly can. We are still aiming to do that. There's a couple of things that happened over the last sort of 6 weeks since our last meeting that I genuinely hadn't thought about. That was a part of that personnel number. So just to be clear, involved in personnel and that personnel line, there's a few things. Not only is it the payment of obviously to our staff, we also have areas such as training, health and safety, overtime, annual leave, and professional memberships. One of the things that happened during COVID-19 was no one took annual leave. Obviously during that time. So when you had, you've obviously got Easter and you also had a school holidays. So in normal circumstances, quite a few of our staff would have taken annual leave and used that up. And of course they didn't. So that's a couple of $100,000 worth of extra costs that we've just now had to take compared to what would be under normal circumstances. So that was genuinely something that I hadn't thought about until I saw the results and saw that coming through. So that's also what's making that variance look a little bit unfavourable at the moment. As a business, we're obviously, the HR team are working with the business to try and get people on leave, as much as we can. Unfortunately, the next school holidays are in July, which is the next financial year, so we probably won't see the benefits of any additional leave now, given we've only got a couple of weeks left of this current financial year and the results. So that will be a bit of a difference in that forecast that I originally talked about. The other thing I just wanted to talk about was also, we talked a lot about, especially over the last couple of weeks, with regards to vacancy factors and vacant roles. So one of the things that we've changed and we do now, if there is a vacant role but we backfill it, so we get an external party to come in via an agency or some other way, we actually include that cost now in that personnel area as well. So while we genuinely still might have a vacant role as far as recruiting for it, especially for some of the specialist areas, we will pay a recruiting agency and we will pay someone to get or a consulting kind of area to get that role backfilled. So that also comes into sort of those costs as well. So I just thought I'd clear that a little bit, because obviously when we talked last time, we thought it was going to be a bit better than what it was going forward. So I think I'll leave that there for now. I know there's a few more questions that will come out going forward, but I'm happy to take those questions.
Thank you, Tracy. A question from Councillor Mark.
Thank you. Remedial accounting question here. Page 51 and 52. I notice in the percentage of annual budget spent column, down near the bottom, total gains and losses, we are at minus 2,519%. Not going into that huge quantum number, but can you explain to me why there's a minus and not brackets? Because are we just, and same question on the next page, which is minus 4%. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, sure. Okay, yep.
Picking brackets means a negative.
I can fix that. No reason, just formatting. Just a formatting of our report. It should be in brackets, you're right, to be consistent with the numbers.
Okay, cool. So I think of it the same way. Yep, thank you.
Pass, you can go to 101 now.
101 accounting.
101.2, yeah.
Very impressed.
Well done.
I do like those words, remedial accounting.
Yeah.
That is the real lingo, Councillor.
I'm definitely not dumb. But the total gains and losses, so that really is, we've spent 2,519% less.
Yeah, so what those gains and losses, so there's two parts. So if you just look purely from the $11 million, that's the revaluation of our swaps and hedges, which you'll hear me talk about a little bit, and there's a couple of papers coming up on that.
Yep.
So what we have to do is every month we basically have to take what we've got out in our swaps and revalue it back to current day. It really is just an accounting transaction.
Yep.
There is the only way it would become realised is that all of a sudden we managed to pay back all of our debt and bought back some of those swaps impacts and the hedging that we've done. That's never going to happen in the environment that we're in. So it's never going to be realised, but it is something that we have to do on a month-by-month basis.
Cool.
That number has always been quite large because obviously historically we've had quite a few hedges and swaps with quite a higher interest rate, and that's what's happening at the moment. So some of our swaps and hedges are around sort of maybe 5%, and obviously interest rates are now around 1 to 2. So what we're doing is having to revalue that back to that lower interest rate.
Okay.
So just on that, we haven't taken out any hedging or swaps for the last 2 years. So basically what we had existing historically is now just dropping off.
Okay.
So that hopefully helps that number over time.
No.
Just on that conversation, it's useful when we get to the deferral strategy to just think about the fact that we have swaps, or we have fixed our interest rate, if you like, at a higher rate. And what we are going to be talking about is changing or restructuring that debt so that we can get some current next year benefit by borrowing from the future in terms of the low interest rates, so that we can actually offset some of the impacts of COVID today.
Right.
So just wanted to add that in, given that our minds have gone there, so that when you get that report and we talk about it, that you understand that it's about taking those 4%, 5% type swaps and restructuring that at a lower cost and pushing it out so that we get a one-off upside in the annual plan year. And that one-off upside has not been accounted for in the annual plan, so it's further upside to what we looked at on Friday.
Thank you. It's a much deeper rabbit hole than I expected to fall down, but that's...
I was going to say, that's my report number 4 done.
No, thank you for that. Thanks for your patience with that.
Thanks, Councillor Mark. Councillor Maxine.
Tracy, my question's with regard to the holiday back pay calculation that Council have done recently. Is that captured up in that personnel cost this year as well?
Yes, it is.
And can you just remind me what that value was?
560, I think it was. 560,000.
And that has is backdated also to what time frame? Do you recall?
The last 9
years, and it's
So we've paid. So we've paid a portion of. It's been split over 2 months. So
Okay. Thanks very much.
Okay, I've got one question, and that, Tracy, is just responding to your year-to-date forecast for balancing the books in paragraph 9. Am I correct in assuming that that includes your best estimate of the $10.5 million loss on sale and the $27 million of work in progress that still needs to be included?
Yes, so it definitely includes the work in progress. That's part of our calculation.
Yep.
So the $10 million is obviously, so that's the transport assets and the disposals and the write-offs of those.
Yep.
We are working on trying to figure out if that is still going to be the whole $10 million. I'm hoping it won't be, but when we just first did and when this report was going out, I decided that would be better to put it in, and then hopefully it's better result.
So, given that we're only a few weeks away, 2 weeks away from year end, is that $4.8 million deficit for balancing the books still likely to be close to where you think we might end up for the year?
Yes, it is, and especially given that we're now on level 1, that probably has actually helped for the last sort of month, I guess, with June.
With some confidence around.
Getting some of those numbers back up. The other thing we've still got to work through some of the COVID-related expenses. There are still quite a few of those around, and we haven't quite finished that report to capture all of that, but I definitely will bring that through for the next report to highlight actually all of the costs that were all the extra costs that were related specifically to COVID. Right. All of the revenue costs that you're seeing in that forecast did already calculate that. So that was part of the work that the team were doing with all of the briefings that we were doing, as well as working through the annual plan and what we needed to switch from one year to another as well. So.
And so if we get some COVID costs around some of our capital projects where we might be required to pay more given the shutdown costs, Is that going to be treated in our financials as a revenue, as an OPEX cost, or will that be added to the capital cost of each project?
Goes to capital.
Goes to capital, okay. Thank you. All right, those are my questions. There are no further questions, so I'll put the staff recommendation, which is that the Finance Committee receives the report. I will move. Do I have a seconder, please? Thanks, Councillor Maxine. Is there any debate? No, there's no debate, so I will put the motion, if you can go to the board to vote, please. Sorry. Yeah, could you, those on Zoom, please use your hands to vote, please. Those against? Oh. Margaret, can you vote, please? Hello, Margaret. Margaret. Hello. Sorry, put Margaret down as not voting.
She's voted using the other one. The motion is carried unanimously, noting that Mayor Paula, Councillor Margaret and Councillor Martin have voted via audio-visual link.
Thank you. Now, I haven't lost an hour already today. The clock at the back there is running an hour fast. So look, I had planned that we would have a morning tea break at 11:30, not 12:25. So let's break for 15 minutes, please. And if you could come back on time, because I'd like, and my intention is 1 o'clock real time is when we will break for lunch. Yeah. 2 o'clock on the clock. So we can take a 15-minute break, please, and if possible, please come back on time. Thank you. Well,
There'll be consequences.
yeah, well. don't be challenged.
and right through to Cambridge. I just think it's a no-brainer that this project will fly and will be well loved.
Thank you, Mayor Paula. There are no other speakers. Yeah, Councillor Martin.
To the Perry Foundation and the many community volunteers who have been advocated for a long time. We get to do the easy bits, in my view, Mr. Chair, but a number of these projects and initiatives are so due to the vision, where people look beyond the horizon and saw, what is possible. So I just want to be mindful of the incredible contribution many people have made, including the Perrys.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other speakers? No, no other speakers. Let's go to the vote. Please, on the board. And by tick, please, by hand. Raise your hands, please, those on Zoom.
The motion is carried unanimously, noting that Mayor Paula, Councillor Gallagher and Councillor Forsyth are voting by audio-visual link.
Thank you, Governance. Thank you, Tracy. Right, so we now move to the next item, which is the interest rate deferral strategy and the interest rate risk control limits, which is item 11. Page 11. Item 11. Thank you. On page 120. So Tracy, you're back in the seat again?
Thank you.
Or you haven't moved?
I haven't moved. Okay, so this paper is about the interest rate deferral strategy and changing what we want to do with that. And I'd like to introduce you to Alex, who is our PwC Treasury consultant that we use, who's based in Auckland. So he's on the Zoom call and we'll take any questions. So it very much is just looking at the way we've been doing some of our swaps and our hedging in later years. And I guess given the COVID situation and trying to find as much money as we can now, right now for the next sort of 12 months, what we did is work with Treasury is to have a look at some of the things that would enable us to do that. So I guess the easy short version of it is we're basically taking the benefit of what these would have meant for us in later years and just bringing that forward into the next year, so 2021 year, by bringing some of those interest rates and making some of those changes. To do that, however, we do need to make a slight change to the investment and liability management policy, because what it will do is drop our percentage of fixed that we have and make that a little bit lower. So we just are asking for a temporary amendment to that policy to allow us to do this piece of work. So I'm happy to take any questions, and as I mentioned, we've got Alex on Zoom if there's anything technical that David or I can't answer.
Welcome, Alex. Okay, questions. Questions, Councillor Maxine.
A pretty simple question, really, and just with regard to the projected savings, $4.6 million in year 21, and the relationship that might have to the annual plan that we're discussing currently, and the draft that we're putting out to community consultation. Has that been factored into there in any way?
No.
And so that would be in addition, an additional saving potentially through that year should this recommendation be approved?
Yes.
Yeah. Do we have any optics on how that might affect the current debt ratio and balancing the books figure?
So I think on Friday night, I think we landed with about $11 million balancing the books deficit, so it's literally $4 million
So
off,
it's straight
off the bottom of that. Yes.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's interesting and it makes you feel a bit better,
Could be
right?
worthwhile.
Yeah.
Well, just kind of through COVID, and just to follow on from Tracy's discussion, I mean, we've always been challenged to think differently and have a look at what the challenges are that council's going through. And one of the things that we wanted to see is how could we restructure our fixed element of our swaps to give some benefit next year and just borrow a bit of benefit from future years. So yeah, and Tracy's right, $11 million deficit is what we'll consult on, but making a decision today would enable us in the 23rd of July meeting to actually bring back a picture that was less than that.
And I guess supplementary from that is that we would expect that then the 23rd would have that factored into it. And,
correct.
Yeah.
If you agree it today,
Right.
then yes, that's correct.
Yeah, yeah. And it wasn't appropriate to bring it to that meeting on Friday because this decision hadn't been put.
Correct.
Yeah, okay. And so then in future years, quite a lot lower potential benefit. Is that simply because of the size of the loans that would be maturing or that would be, swapped?
So it would be that we have swaps that are due to end in the years 24 through to 26. What we are doing is picking up 13 of those swaps and, if you like, deferring for 1 year and then extending those swaps to another 3 years. So those ones would continue on for another 3 years than they would otherwise. And that benefit, if they ended earlier, that we would get in those following 3 years, we're bringing forward, if you like, into the 2021 year, just to offset some of the one-off COVID impacts for our ratepayers.
And then there's also the expectation that those interest rates will stay low for
That's right.
through into 5 years in the future?
They're at very low rates. The volatility isn't there. We, as Tracy will attest to, we catch up with the PwC Treasury guys on a regular basis, so we're quite agile in our ability to fix new lending should we need to. So the risk is very low of this proposition at this time.
And I guess just finishing with, wow, congratulations, PwC, for coming up with this option for us.
Councillor Ewan.
Yeah, thank you. Going back to my favourite subject for a moment, would this be an opportunity for council, having created this extra headroom, to rehydrate the endowment fund that has been sucked dry? After all, there was 28 million. I think we've put 3 million back, so you still need to put 26 million back. Is this an opportunity for that?
Point of order, Mr. Chair. The Speaker used the word rehydrate. He knows it's banned.
If that was your game plan, you could bring it to any meeting and discuss that. There's always an opportunity. Council can make a decision to either move some cash and ring fence it, or to modify your debt to revenue calculations so that it excludes the endowment funds.
Because, Mr. Chair, if I could, because it is on topic. I mean, we've had part of our financial strategy in the past was to take a fund that was earning 8.8%, and we've used it to reduce the cost to council in terms of lowering our debt. The market has shifted. The very motivation that's leading to this decision today means that, in fact, we can borrow money on the market at a more affordable rate. And I am very keen to try to make sure that the funds are put back to where they were originally enabled, and there's a whole lot of legislation around it and best practice around it. And I just see, rather than, and I'm raising it now to try to lower any expectation of the organisation to thinking that they could potentially go off and do other projects. I'm simply saying, surely we should meet our obligation back to the endowment fund and move that fund, these savings, to that fund, so that the fund can be implemented and do what it was originally designed to do.
That is a subject for a separate work stream, isn't it? That we will be getting that, and that presumably will be one of the potential advantages that we might have now that we didn't have in terms of progressing that change.
I think it also lends, Councillor Ewan, to the next paper where we talk about the debt to revenue.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Kesh.
The consultation in terms of the annual plan. If this does pass today, is there any opportunity to adjust that deficit so that we're actually gaining feedback on the real-time figures? Only because it's quite a substantial amount, which I think will shape public opinion quite a lot.
Short answer is no, because of the work that's required to reconfigure the financial graphs associated with such a decision, and that consultation document needs to go out as soon as possible. And saying that, the Finance Committee is live streamed. We do actually do a media release also of key decisions in the Finance Committee, so we could include that, so the public would get visibility of that.
Thank you. Couple of questions from me. One, in reading the comments by PwC on page 122, where they indicate that there's no free lunch here, am I correct in assuming that what we're doing is we're spreading the interest cost, that we're kind of deferring the interest cost instead of it falling into next year? We're pushing it out into those later years. So the cost is still there. It's just being extended over a larger number of years than the loans are specifically for.
Correct, that's right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
So we're buying some time effectively.
That's exactly what we're doing.
We're not creating a permanent savings of 4.6 million.
Correct.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. And my other question is around the risks in paragraph 16, where the staff state that care must be exercised, and I interpret that as that we need to be nimble and amend our policy quickly should there be any future interest rate changes. Are we confident that we are nimble enough, and with the support of PwC, we can act quickly, almost at the flick of a switch, to move from this policy to whatever might be necessary should interest rates start to climb, and it might become possible that we should be fixing rather than floating?
Absolutely, and as David alluded to before, so we meet with Alex and the team every single month. We go through what our forecast debt is and what it's looking like. We review everything that we've got going on. We've got a great dashboard that kind of highlights a few key areas. So that's very much what we're continually doing, is looking out into the future, what borrowings we need, and then any hedging and things like that with regards to interest rate. Because that was probably my very first question, is how quickly, if we wanted to, as I mentioned earlier on, we haven't done any hedging or any fixed for quite a few years now. So how quickly can we do that? And the team have advised that it is reasonably easy and reasonably quick to do. So okay. I don't know, Alex, if you want to add anything more to that.
Yeah, I support that, Tracy, that if there was a decision made to change the interest rate fixing profile and decide to add to interest rate hedging levels, were there an expectation of interest rates moving higher, that could be executed on the same day with the bank. So management has the delegated authority under the liability management policy to execute those hedges to the delegated authority limits, which would say that if there was risk of interest rates moving very quickly, action could be taken decisively. So absolutely there is flexibility to be agile there.
Okay, thank you. And one final question. Given that this is a significant timing difference in terms of us reporting the interest, do you anticipate any audit issues with our auditors either requiring us to account for those deferrals or note them?
No.
No, okay. All right, no further questions. Let's go to debate and first of all put up the staff recommendation. Do I have someone to move? I'll move. Thank you, Councillor Ewan. A seconder? Thanks, Councillor Maxine. So the motion is there, and I'll call for any debate. Oh, sorry, Kesh. Kesh, yeah.
Just to reiterate the answer that I just got to my question regarding consultation. I understand the time constraints. I'm just a bit concerned that we're expecting the public to give us feedback if they've missed the results of this meeting, to give us feedback on information that's not current. So how can we expect to trust their feedback knowing that they're not basing their decisions on the full picture? So I'm just hoping that we find a way to communicate this better should it pass, just so that the feedback we get and basing quite important decisions on is actually feedback that we can trust. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kesh. Councillor Ewan.
Yeah, look, my comments were going to be very similar to Kesh, and I wanted to support her narrative. And I think from a communication point of view, we've got to be reminding people that our ratepayers that this is very dynamic and fluid, and the information we put out for consultation is by its very nature changing all the time. Not only in regards to the point Councillor Kesh has raised, but also the shovel-ready projects, that when they come along, then everything could change. And I think we've made the right decision by having delayed our annual plan process, because we were hoping to get more certainty, but we've been shown that while attempting to try to get more certainty, we've ended up not getting any more certainty, and we've delayed the process. So I think the pragmatic thing to do is to proceed with what we know, but with a real clear communication that says, actually, it is constantly changing, and we as council will use every mechanism we can, including this committee, to update those changes, and that if you really are interested in hearing the current position at a moment in time, you've got to follow the Finance Committee, because that's where it's happening. And even then, hours later, it will have moved again. Yep. That was the only comment.
No further discussion. Look, I'll just add a few comments. I think what this does do is it buys us time during the COVID-19 rebuild. It's a windfall. And I appreciate the comments from Councillor Kesh and from Councillor Ewan about how we have got a number of balls in the air and things are changing. Remember the strategy or the major assumption behind the annual plan that's going out for consultation was on the basis that we would be in level 2 for 6 months. And we know now that we're in level 1. Hopefully that's where we will stay, but we don't know. I guess we don't know whether interest rates might move, although, you know, pundits have been saying for the last 5 to 10 years that they'll go up at some stage, and all they've done is come down. So if interest rates did move, then of course we might find the benefit of that 4 million might erode reasonably quickly if we then have to go back to fixing and back to hedging again. So I guess I'm comfortable where we are now, and if there's an extra pot at the bottom of the rainbow in 12 months' time when we're reporting back to the city that in fact the $11 million is now only 7 or less than 7 million, then I guess that's a better position to be in than to have it pan out at $20 million. But thank you for the discussion. If there is no further debate, we will go to the board for voting. And hand voting, please, from the participants on Zoom.
The motion is carried unanimously, noting that Mayor Southgate, Councillor Gallagher and Councillor Forsyth are voting via audio-visual link.
Thank you, Governance. All right, so our next report is report number 12, which is the Local Government Funding Authority Notice of Special General Meeting, and that's on page 127. And most councillors or all councillors will be aware that we've already had some briefing discussions on this special general meeting. So again, Tracy, you haven't moved yet.
No, and again, thank you, Chair. So we have talked about this quite a lot, especially over the annual plan period, briefings and meetings and things like that. So all this report, though, is doing is just representing Hamilton City Council on the LGFA and allowing them to go forward and make these changes. This is not making a decision that we will add this in and make this change to our strategy. So that's kind of part 2, if you like. So as per the staff recommendations, it's just obviously allowing our voting on behalf of HCC to go ahead.
Thank you, Tracy. Any questions? No? All right. We will move now to the staff recommendation, which is on page 127. If we could put that up on the board, please. Margaret, did you have a question?
Sorry, no, I'm
Okay. well, we will go. We'll at least create an opportunity for debate after I've moved it. I will move. Do I have a seconder, please? Thanks, Councillor Maxine. Is there any debate? They're called accounting angels. Councillor Ewan.
Yeah, look, I fully support this, but I note just a word of caution that even if, when we're ready for this to go forward, just because we've changed our covenants doesn't mean we have to use all of the all of what that enables us to do. And my warning would be to my now adult daughters: just because you've got a credit card doesn't mean you have to use it.
Yep. Wise counsel. Any other speakers in debate? All right, there are no speakers, so we will go to the vote. Please vote on board for those present and by hands for those on Zoom.
The motion is carried unanimously, noting that Mayor Southgate, Councillor Gallagher and Councillor Forsyth are voting via audio-visual link.
Thank you. So now we go to number 10? Yeah, number 10. Okay, so now we go back to item 10, which is the long-term service report. Thank you, Julie, and thank you, Katie, for remaining so patiently sitting back there. And welcome. You're welcome now to speak to the report.
Tēnā tātou katoa, ko Julie Corson, tuku ingoai, ko Katie Nudd, tuku ingoai. Good morning, Chair Pascoe, Mayor Southgate and councillors. So this is our quarter-free non-financial performance measures that we report against for our long-term plan. And the performance measures this time, of course, reflect the time that we're in and the impact of COVID-19 on our city. So we have At this point in time, we have 6 measures that we will not meet. One of these was because of our infringement, but the other 5 were because we haven't been able to either deliver the work because of COVID-19 restrictions or the reduction in visitor numbers from COVID-19. We have 10 orange where we are uncertain at Q3 if we will meet the year-end target. So we've made them orange with the view that by the time we get to the year-end we'll have a better position. And they mainly relate around time responses and whether we'll have that catch up, I suppose, in some of those timed responses. We have 12 that we have no data for. 7 of these are ones where we haven't been able to collect the data this quarter where we were expecting to because of COVID-19. Particularly the quality of life survey, which provides 4 of our measures, was cancelled because of COVID-19. And some of our other surveys that we run, like the cycling survey and our City Safe survey, we haven't yet undertaken those. 5 of those 12 we still expect at this stage to have data for by the end of the year. We have been in discussions with our auditors just to make sure that, how do we report this? Because, of course, we're not the only council in this situation. And so they are giving us advice about how do we report these at the end of the year. There will be some measures that will say we'll have no data because of COVID-19 or we're not achieved because of COVID-19. And that is their advice to us, so that'll be consistent across New Zealand. So other councils will be reporting in a similar way. Happy to take questions.
Thank you. Questions, councillors? Yep, Councillor Mark.
Hello, thank you. Just briefly, page 96 of the agenda, parks and people having access to parks. It says here data's next expected in June 2020. Are we far off finding that out? Because it wouldn't be COVID related, would it?
Yeah, we will have that. So that's produced, it's a map at a point in time that's produced at the end of the June month.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
All right, so, yep, no, that's it for me, thank you.
Questions, councillors? I've got a couple of questions. Page 104 on the water supply, and that's the 2 around attendance time and a median resolution time. How do we know that when the year-to-date results are green, that the year-end forecast is going to be needing action?
I'll ask Mari to...
Mari. Oh, hello, Mari.
Hi, good morning. I can probably provide some clarification on that. It's because of, due to COVID, during the COVID shutdown or lockdown period, we only responded to urgent call-outs, and so that means any non-urgent call-outs basically have a delay of at least 4 weeks. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Right, thank you. That answers my question. And the other question, Julie, as you've alluded to Audit New Zealand and how they might address the off-track and needs actions at year-end. Have they indicated that, given that they were quite tough on us last year with our approving of resource consents, are they likely to hold a strong hand on this, or have they indicated that they're likely that they will take into account the COVID issues and not necessarily consider modifying or expressing a modification opinion in our audit report?
Just to clarify, the 2 issues are quite different. Last time we got qualified because we were recording data incorrectly. And so that was
I thought it was around the number of days, wasn't it?
But it was the basis of how we were recording that
okay,
data.
okay.
So we have since, Jen's team's done lots of work and we have since corrected that.
Okay.
And so that's no longer an issue. Okay. In terms of COVID-19 and our ability, not to meet the target, that won't qualify us as
Okay,
such. It'll
okay.
just be recorded as the target not being met. So there's no issue around a qualification for not meeting those targets.
And the discussions with Audit New Zealand have been pretty positive to date,
Yes.
have they?
Yes,
In terms
yep,
of,
they've been very clear.
in terms of their understanding of the challenges that
That's
we've
right.
got. Yep, okay, thank you. All right, not looking at any other questions, so let's move to the staff recommendation, which is, I think, receiving the report. This is on page 82, that the Finance Committee receives the report. Maxine, you'll move. Have a seconder, please. Thanks, Councillor Mark. Is there any debate? No. Okay, we'll go to the vote, please. Voting on the board and voting by hands for those on Zoom. Thank you.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I pressed the wrong button.
Okay, can we reset, please? Okay. Yeah, vote, I've already, yeah, if you could vote by hand on Zoom, please.
The motion is carried unanimously, noting that Mayor Southgate, Councillor Gallagher and Councillor Forsyth were voting by audio-visual link.
All right, so now we move to exclude the public. I wonder whether should we break for lunch or continue on? Should we break for lunch? Or? Yeah, let's push through. Okay. Okay, so let's move. I will move that we that the meeting moves to exclude the public. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Mark, thank you. Those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Hands.